Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter 4 this time. Hands-on Ethical Hacking and Network Defense is the book. This week, we're talking about footprinting and social engineering. In a nutshell, in computers, footprinting is the process of accumulating data regarding the specific network environment that we're looking at, and usually for the purpose of finding ways to intrude into the environment. Footprinting can reveal system vulnerabilities, as we'll see, and improve the ease with which they are exploited. Then we have, separate topic but related, social engineering, which is the art of manipulating people, by phone, by email, in person, so they can give up confidential information. The attacker uses the social engineering to accumulate the data. A little here, a little there, fills in a big picture. So let's talk about it. These are our objectives for this week on the lesson. Now, we use web tools for footprinting. We hackers do, right? Hackers use web tools for footprinting. They use tools on the internet to find out how a company's network is designed. This is really part one of a hacker's attack, maybe part two, right? Which part one being the social engineering part first. But this is really related. It's all up front. Before you conduct a security test on a network, then, in your job as a security tester, you need to perform footprinting tasks, just like the attackers. You are casing the joint. So as a security tester, you too must find out as much as you can about the organization that you're advising on. You want to develop a process of finding information on the company's network. And this, again, is what we call footprinting. Sometimes it's referred to as reconnaissance, but formally we'll call it footprinting. So footprinting is passive sometimes, or non-intrusive. And you're attempting just to glean information about your target, right? But then there's also active footprinting, right? Which means that you're actually prodding the network with port scans and looking for DNS zone transfers, etc. So with active footprinting, the advantage is the hacker is being logged, right? With passive, not so much. But just know that we'll kind of break this lesson down into passive and active, right? So active footprinting is actually, again, prodding the target network in ways that might seem suspicious to you as somebody on the security team, to a network defender, right? And by doing this, we're actually seeking to gain competitive intelligence, right? It's going to include things like port scans, right? Remember that conversation? Is port scanning legal? Maybe, maybe not. Can depend on where you're located and your functions, etc. So DNS zone transfers, right? In this chapter, we see how DNS zone transfers can be used to determine a computer's IP address range and the host names. So as we learned in the last chapter, DNS zone transfers should only be on TCP and in a security fashion, and limit them. So in this, using these tools, we're interacting with the target's web server. So security tester is going to try to discover in your role as much as possible about the organization and its network. Again, you'll use both passive and active techniques combined, right? We want to explain, as security tester, we want to explain to our client the various methods that our competitors are using to gain this information. And this is where some of this information is valuable. It starts a good conversation before you're even actually doing the work. Just remember, as long as the activity doesn't jeopardize the company in any way as a security tester, you are not obligated to inform the company if you, for example, might find data that is sensitive or secure. The goal is to be able to expose your client that you're working for to methods that the competitors use to gain information about them. right? Recall that security professionals and company officials, though, can be sued for releasing confidential information. Make sure it's part of your agreement that we talked about in earlier chapters. Now, the book shows this table. These are various tools for footprinting. It goes on for a couple of slides here. And this is really a kind of a summary of them. We want to read through it and be familiar with the key points. For example, Z attack proxy, or ZAP as it's known, Z attack proxy, is used to gather information about a company's website and discover any existing vulnerabilities, right? And this is a useful tool because it can actually spider or crawl through these remote websites and even produce a list of vulnerabilities for you, right? ZAP has features that automatically edit the configuration of the web browser to direct traffic through your ZAP proxy. Those are plug and hacks that automatically edit the configuration. So the Zap tool interface, when it spiders, it can actually scan the site, right, using this Zap. And it sends the web server a series of requests designed to identify vulnerabilities. And the vulnerabilities will display under the Alerts tab if you're using Zap that was selected for spidering. Now, spidering, again, or crawling, is an automated way to discover pages that have a website links. Google even uses spidering. That's how it's continually crawling and looking for more information, and it can return millions of hits when you do a search. So it can be used for good, but it can also be used by the hacker for discovery, right? Another example is the Who Is utility at the bottom of the page. It's a commonly used web tool to gather IP address and domain information, and good guys use it, again, like us, and attackers can also use it. Now, Who Is, and it's the phrase is pronounced who is, even though it's written as one word, is a query and response protocol that is widely used for querying databases that store the registered users of an internet resource, right, such as a domain name or an IP address or something of the such, right? So as security testers, we need to be aware of these tools for gathering information about the networks. Again, with the Who Is function, you can discover network configuration factors, right? So that is a good one. Now, continuing with these web tools for footprinting, spending a reasonable time frame for this phase for the hacker's world, and even for you as a security tester, for this part of your investigation, spending some time doing this is important. But be careful you don't spend too much time on this activity, right? The following this continues to cover more information on tools you might use. Now, one of the things I recommend is try the domain dossier, right, which is a Who Is tool. If you go to the link that I've listed at the bottom of this page, and you can type in mit.edu, and you can see a lot of information about the college known as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And look at the results. You could also type in uona.edu for the University of North America. Find a lot of good and accurate information about the college, the university, the address, who's the president, and the domains, etc. A lot of good information if you are. So use the Who Is tool called the domain dossier. Okay, now continuing on, we are through this process conducting competitive intelligence, right? There are so many sources available to find this information legally and through the technologies that we've discussed, and there are many more, right? As security professionals, we want to be able to explain, as I mentioned, ways that our attackers can gather information and secure some of that information. You might not list email addresses or with a link on a website, for example. You might make them a PDF so somebody actually has to type it in, for example. And so you're working hard to analyze the company's site, right? You may want to go to zapproxy.org, right? And you could download that attack tool if you wanted to. As they advertise, though, it's the world's most widely used web app scanner. Now, it's free and it's open source, meaning that it's maintained by volunteers. Open source can be dangerous, but it can be very good, right? Remember, the Linux OS is an open source operating system. Phenomenal, right? Used by many companies. Again, Zap will help you gather information about companies' websites and discover their vulnerabilities. Okay, continue with analyzing the company's websites. Once the browser's configured, the attacker can browse the target site, and the target site should appear in the Zap tool interface. If you've downloaded it, that's up to you, your discretion. And the site can be selected for spidering, right, through this process. Again, spidering or crawling is that automated discovery of pages of a website by following link to link to link, right? And within seconds, the file names of web pages on the spidered site are displayed under the Spider tab. Very interesting. Okay, I'm going to continue with email addresses. Using email addresses, they will help actually retrieve even more information. So it's helpful to find out a company's email address format, right? You might be able to guess it. A lot of times we can. But we can also find corporate employee information. You might go to groups.google.com. In fact, from there you might, if you do go there, click the drop-down box. And type in, for example, @Microsoft.com and hit enter. Now, if you get nothing back in that search, it's probably because you're searching in your own groups, right? So click at the bottom. There should be a link that popped up that says try searching across all groups or messages. Bam. Now you'll see a list of email addresses and blogs. You probably only see 2 or 3 at first, but there'll be another link to see that says see more conversations. Expand that, okay? Congratulations if you've done that, if you've followed me through the process, because as a security tester, you are doing footprinting. Remember that messages posted in news groups aren't private, and they can be up there for many years. So as a security tester, you should recommend that employees use web-based email accounts such as Outlook or Gmail rather than company email accounts for posting messages to news groups. You don't want to use the company email address. They'll be up there forever. So if you know a user's email address, you can enter it in groups.google.com search page. In the real world, you would search for an email accounts of IT staff or other key personnel. Very interesting, right? Okay, this is HTTP basics, right, is next. And I'm going to pause there and come back for part 2.